The day I realized my own brother valued money over blood, I knew war had begun. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 47 years old, born and raised in Chicago. For 2 decades, I was the man behind the wheel of Carter and Wells Logistics, not a driver, but the one who made sure every driver had a route, every load had a plan, and every mile turned profit. I wasn't the public face. That was my younger brother, Mark, the numbers man, the polished talker. But I was the one who built the backbone: dispatch systems, safety protocols, maintenance schedules. Trucks don't move on charisma. They move on discipline. That was me, at home. I thought life was steady. My wife Emily, my 16-year-old son Ryan, the modest house we owned in Oak Park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Every bonus I ever took, every overtime hour I worked, I justified as being for them. Ryan's private school tuition, Emily's dream kitchen remodel, vacations in Florida when the winters here got too brutal. I thought loyalty and sacrifice meant security. But in the last year, I noticed things slipping. Emily took long phone calls in the backyard, voice low, ending quickly when I came near. Ryan mentioned that Uncle Mark kept asking him about future college funding and whether I was prepared to step aside soon. At the office, I walked in on Mark closing his laptop the second I entered. Vendors who used to greet me with respect suddenly routed everything through him. I pushed it down, told myself I was paranoid. Family doesn't betray family, that's what I believed. Until the annual shareholder dinner. It was supposed to be routine, a hotel ballroom near Michigan Avenue, steaks, cheap wine poured into expensive glasses. I came prepared with my usual speech: on-time deliveries up, accident rates down, fuel savings from the pilot program. I thought investors would nod, clap, and go back to gossiping about their portfolios. Halfway through appetizers, a man in a gray suit approached my table. I didn't recognize him. He carried a thick envelope under one arm. His face was professional, flat. "Mr. Daniel Carter?" I nodded. "You've been served." I opened the envelope. My hands went cold. It was a petition to remove me as COO of Carter and Wells Logistics, signed by 2 directors, filed under Mark Carter's authority as CFO. The words blurred for a second. Gross mismanagement, obstruction of growth, failure to adapt. I looked up. Mark was already watching me from across the room, glass of wine in hand, smiling like a man who had played his final card. Emily's face drained of color. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Ryan, standing by the dessert table, stared at me with wide eyes. The room didn't spin, but something inside me shifted. 20 years of loyalty, of sweat, of nights spent balancing routes while everyone slept, dismissed with a smile and a signature. That night wasn't the beginning of my betrayal. It was the proof that the betrayal had already happened. The morning after the shareholder dinner, I drove to our headquarters on West Kinsey out of habit. For 20 years, that building had been my second home. My badge didn't work. Security averted their eyes when I demanded to be let in. On my phone, an email appeared. Effective immediately, Daniel Carter is suspended from all operational duties pending review. It was signed by the board, drafted by my brother. I pushed past security anyway, up to the top floor. My office door was unlocked. Inside, Mark sat in my chair, sipping from my coffee mug like he owned the place. "You can't be here," he said calmly. "This is my company," I snapped. "Our company," he corrected, eyes cold. "And the board agrees it's time for new leadership." I grabbed the envelope sitting on my desk. "You're pushing me out for blocking Vanguard dispatch. That's not modernization, that's theft." Mark smirked. "You call it theft. I call it strategy. Outsourcing saves money. Investors want boldness, not your small-town caution. The door creaked. Emily stood frozen at the threshold. Her face was pale, guilty. "You knew," I whispered. Her lips trembled. "Mark told me it was restructuring. I thought it was for the best." Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it's a quiet nod from the person you sleep next to. My phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. A screenshot of the family group chat. "You have been removed by Mark Carter. Cousins, uncles, aunts, all still there. Just not me." In that moment, I saw it clearly. I wasn't just suspended from the company. I was exiled from the family. They expected me to collapse under the weight of shame. But isolation doesn't break me. It sharpens me. And I knew then I would strike back with the only weapon I ever needed: facts. Within a week, I became a shadow. My email account was deactivated. My company phone went dark. Vendors I'd worked with for decades stopped picking up when they saw my number. One even said, "Sorry, Daniel. Mark told us you're under investigation. We can't risk it." The smear campaign spread faster than truth. Mark whispered to investors that I was cooking the books. At church, an old friend patted my shoulder and muttered, "Hope you get the help you need." On Facebook, my sister-in-law posted vague quotes about toxic partners finally facing justice. People shared it like gospel. At home, the silence cut deepest. Emily spent nights scrolling on her phone, telling me she needed space. She started sleeping in the guest room. Ryan barely spoke. When he finally did, it was worse than silence. "Dad," he asked quietly, "did you really steal from the company?" I had no answer that would undo the doubt already planted. One evening, I tried opening the family group chat, the one for birthdays, holiday plans, photo sharing. A red banner appeared. "You are no longer a member of this group. Removed. By Mark." That was the lowest point. Not the office lockout, not the rumors, not the looks from neighbors. It was the digital execution notice from my own blood. They thought exile would crush me. But as I sat alone in my quiet house, shame twisting into resolve, I realized exile is only fuel for a man who still has the truth on his side. When you strip a man of his title, his office, and even his place at the family table, you expect him to crawl away. Mark miscalculated. He forgot what I built with my own two hands: systems, records, contracts, the paper trail that never lies. I turned my dining room into an investigation bunker. Stacks of invoices, bills of lading, and driver logs covered the table where we used to eat family dinners. I cross-checked payments with routes, then routes with dispatch approvals. A pattern surfaced. Vanguard Dispatch, the shell Mark had been pushing, was billing us double for work already done by in-house teams. Worse, maintenance reports bore his digital signature on equipment I personally knew hadn't been serviced in months. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed evidence that spoke louder than Mark's charm. That's when Maya Patel, our senior analyst, knocked on my door. She was pale, nervous, clutching a flash drive. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "He made me alter reports. He said the board would never check. I saved everything." On that drive sat 6 months of emails and one audio file. Mark's voice, clear as day, massaged the numbers. Daniel doesn't need to see every detail. The question was how to use it. A courtroom battle would take years. I needed something fast, public, undeniable. The chance came sooner than I expected. A neighborhood charity gala. Both investors and board members were in attendance, along with donors, press, and enough community figures to turn whispers into headlines. Mark arrived in a tailored suit, Emily at his side. I watched from across the room, folder tucked under my arm, pulse steady. When Mark took the microphone to thank the guests, I walked forward. "Before you donate another $1, I said, loud enough for the microphones to catch, "you should know who you're trusting." I laid documents on the podium, side-by-side comparisons of Vanguard's inflated invoices against actual mileage reports. I read aloud one line from the recording, "Massage the numbers. Daniel doesn't need to see every detail." Gasps broke out. A banker stood. "Mark, is this true?" Mark laughed too quickly. "These are lies, desperate fabrications from a bitter man." But Maya stepped from the crowd, her voice shaking but firm. "I worked under him. I recorded that meeting. Everything Daniel says is real." Silence fell. For the first time since my exile, the room tilted toward me. I wasn't just the disgraced brother anymore. I was the man holding receipts. That night I walked out without applause, but I didn't need it. The damage was done. The proof was alive, breathing in every investor's mind. And Mark knew the storm had only begun. The fallout from the gala didn't take long to show itself. 2 weeks later, a Carter and Wells semi hauling hazardous chemicals jackknifed on I-55. The photos hit the evening news before the wreckage was cleared. Our logo sprawled across twisted steel, yellow barrels leaking into the highway ditch. The reporter's words were brutal. Cost-cutting blamed for accident. Questions about safety oversight. The insurance company reviewed the claim. Their response was one sentence: coverage denied, maintenance records incomplete. I didn't need to guess who had signed those records. I had copies. Mark's digital signature was all over them. The company's cash flow collapsed overnight. Drivers demanded paychecks that bounced. Banks froze lines of credit. Longtime customers began calling competitors. My phone rang too. Not from Mark, but from desperate investors. They wanted answers I was no longer supposed to give. At home, Emily finally broke. "He told me you'd be bought out clean," she admitted, tears streaming. "He said we'd still get dividends. He swore it was safe." I believed him. Her voice cracked. "Daniel, I thought you were the stubborn one." Then Ryan walked into the kitchen, his face pale. "Uncle Mark just texted me. He says I should intern for him this summer, that he'll take care of my future since you won't." He held up his phone. The message burned into me more than the accident photos. My own brother was trying to turn my son against me. The final piece dropped when Maya called after midnight. "Daniel, you need to know this. Vanguard's accounts are empty. Hundreds of thousands transferred offshore. If regulators dig, they'll see everything, and they'll drag Mark down with it." For years, Mark thought I was the cautious one, the man too slow to take risks. He thought he could paint me as obsolete, exile me, replace me. But now his empire of lies was cracking, and I was the only man who could read the rubble. The betrayal had driven me into silence. Now the emergency pulled me back into the fight. The company was burning, my name was scorched, and my family was dangling in the smoke. It was time to turn isolation into action. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was survival of my legacy, of my son's respect, and of the truth. If you're listening on Revenge Stories Menu 50, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you. The board called an emergency meeting. They tried to frame it as routine damage control. But I knew the truth. Carter and Wells was seconds from collapse, and Mark's mask was cracking. The conference room was packed. Directors, lawyers, even a couple of state regulators sat along the back wall. Mark opened with his usual polish, pacing in front of the projector. "Ladies and gentlemen, the accident on I-55 was tragic, but it was unforeseeable. We're already negotiating with new partners to secure fresh financing. This is a temporary storm." He spoke like nothing had happened, like payroll wasn't frozen, like our logo wasn't splashed across every news channel. I stood when he tried to move on. "Temporary storm? You falsified maintenance records. You funneled contracts through Vanguard Dispatch, which was nothing but your own shell. You drained accounts offshore while our drivers risked their lives on bald tires." He laughed nervously. "More lies. Daniel was suspended for cause. He has no authority here." That was when I placed the folder on the table. Inside were audited bank records tracing Vanguard's invoices straight into an LLC controlled by Mark's college roommate. Transfers to a Cayman account. Dates, amounts, signatures. I let the papers speak. Then I played Maya's recording. Mark's voice filled the room. "Massage the numbers. The board will never check." Silence followed, heavy and absolute. A director cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, this is your voice?" Mark's face drained. "Taken out of context," he muttered. Maya stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "I was there. He ordered it. I saved everything." The regulators whispered among themselves. One slid me a card. "We'll need copies for our office." I turned back to the board. "You want bold leadership? Here's bold. Admit the rot, cut it out, and save what's left before drivers lose their homes and customers sue you into the ground. Or keep pretending and let him drag you into bankruptcy." Mark slammed his fist on the table. "You think they'll trust you after the smear campaign? After everything?" I met his eyes, steady. "I don't need trust. I have proof." The chairman raised his hand. "Effective immediately, Mark Carter is suspended as CFO pending federal investigation. Daniel Carter is reinstated with full authority to stabilize operations." Mark's chair scraped back. "You can't do this to me. I built this company." "No," I cut in. "We built it, and you sold it out." Security moved in. For the first time, I saw fear replace his smirk. As they led him out, his eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. None stood. I gathered the papers, my hands steady. The battle wasn't finished. Lawsuits, audits, fallout would follow. But the decisive blow had landed. The brother who thought he could erase me was now the one erased. The confrontation ended in a boardroom, but the echoes followed me home. For days, my phone buzzed with reporters, investors, even regulators. But one call stood out. Emily's. "Daniel," she said softly, "Mark wants to see you. Just once. He's not doing well." I almost hung up, but part of me needed to hear it. We met in a rented office his lawyer arranged. No suits, no board members, no investors. Just two brothers sitting across a folding table. 20 years of partnership shattered between us. Mark looked smaller, hollowed out. His tie hung loose, his hands shook. "I made mistakes," he whispered. "I was chasing growth, trying to secure the future. You don't understand the pressure." "You stole," I replied. My voice was calm, steady. "You forged records. You risked lives. And you tried to turn my own son against me." He winced. "I never wanted Ryan." "Don't," I cut in. "Don't even say his name." For a moment, his bravado cracked. Tears welled. "We're blood, Daniel. Can't you forgive me?" "Forgive." The word felt heavy, poisoned. I thought of Ryan's doubt, Emily's silence, my exile from the family chat. I thought of drivers paid late, customers betrayed, investors blindsided. "Blood isn't a free pass," I said finally. "Family is loyalty, respect. You chose greed. You chose betrayal. That was your decision." His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Mark's eyes searched mine, desperate. "So that's it?" You cut me out completely? I stood, gathering my coat. No, Mark. You cut yourself out. I'm just accepting it. Outside, the winter wind hit my face, sharp and clean. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. I hadn't forgiven, but I had decided. The past was a chain I refused to wear any longer. In the weeks that followed, Carter and Wells stabilized. Regulators launched their investigations, investors restructured, and for the first time in years, I slept without dread gnawing at me. The company would survive, not because of Mark, but in spite of him. At home, things shifted too. Emily admitted the depth of her silence, the way she'd chosen comfort over loyalty. We spoke long into the night, honest in ways we hadn't been for years. Some wounds would take time, maybe forever, but at least the truth stood in daylight. Ryan, once caught in the crossfire, looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, I know you didn't give up. I'm proud of you." That was worth more than any board resolution. I began building something new, not just a stronger company, but a stronger self. I joined a small fitness group, started investing my own money in businesses that valued integrity. I spent weekends teaching Ryan how to drive on back roads, talking about choices, about how trust is built slow and lost fast. Mark faded into silence. Last I heard, he was preparing for trial, his empire reduced to debts and excuses. I didn't celebrate his fall. I didn't need to. My revenge wasn't his collapse. It was my freedom. I had been erased from my own family chat, cast out of my own company, humiliated in front of my own child. But I stood back up. I chose clarity over illusion, truth over lies, and my son's respect over my brother's schemes. And now, when I look in the mirror, I see a man who finally understands that loyalty isn't owed, it's earned. I choose me. Tell me what you'd do. Drop your story and subscribe Revenge Stories Men U50 USA.